The rain came down in sheets, thick and unforgiving, turning the city sidewalk into a mirror of smeared lights and broken reflections. Daniel Carter stood beneath the flickering awning of a closed pawnshop, his lunch bag clutched in one hand, his phone in the other. The voicemail notification blinked like a warning he didn't want to hear again. He already knew what it said. Rent overdue. Final notice. Across the street, traffic hissed past, tires slicing through water, drivers sealed away in warm cars and private worries. Daniel exhaled slowly, fogging the cold air. He was early for work, as usual. Early because home had become too quiet lately, and silence had a way of reminding him of everything he'd lost. He glanced down at the paper bag. Peanut butter sandwich. 1 apple. A thermos of weak coffee. He'd packed it at dawn while his daughter slept, her small chest rising and falling beneath a blanket decorated with cartoon moons. Lily never complained. That was the hardest part. 8 years old, and already too familiar with disappointment. Daniel shifted his weight, rubbing his hands together for warmth, when he noticed the boy. At first, he almost missed him. The kid was curled up against the brick wall a few yards away, knees pulled tight to his chest, hoodie soaked through, shoes held together by what looked like hope and frayed stitching. He couldn't have been more than 10. Maybe 11. His face was thin, eyes too old for his age, staring at nothing and everything at once. Daniel's stomach tightened. He looked away, instinctively. He didn't have the bandwidth for this today. He had a double shift at the warehouse, a supervisor who watched him like a hawk, and a life that already felt like it was balancing on one loose thread. He took a step toward the bus stop. Then the boy coughed. It was a dry, hollow sound, the kind that echoed too long in the chest. Daniel stopped. The rain dripped steadily from the awning, tapping out an impatient rhythm. He told himself someone else would help. Someone with more money. Someone who wasn't one missed paycheck away from disaster. But no one else was stopping. Daniel turned back. He walked slowly, careful not to startle the kid. Up close, the boy smelled like rain and old clothes and hunger. His hands were red with cold, fingers curled inward as if trying to disappear. "Hey," Daniel said gently. "You okay?" The boy looked up, startled. His eyes were a sharp, intelligent brown. For a second, fear flashed across his face, then something like resignation. "I'm fine," the boy muttered, though his voice shook. Daniel nodded, as if he believed him. He crouched down, ignoring the way his knees protested. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. "Eli." "Daniel," he replied. "You out here by yourself?" Eli shrugged. "Guess so." There was more behind that answer. Daniel could feel it. Years ago, he might have pushed, might have tried to fix everything in one conversation. Life had taught him better. Sometimes kindness had to be quiet. The bus roared past behind them, spraying water onto the curb. Daniel glanced at his watch. He was going to be late. Again. He sighed, then did something without letting himself think too hard about it. He held out the paper bag. "I've got lunch," he said. "You look like you could use it more than I can." Eli stared at the bag like it might vanish if he reached for it. "I can't." "It's okay," Daniel interrupted. "Really?" The boy's hands trembled as he took it. He opened the bag carefully, reverently, as if unwrapping something sacred. When he took the first bite of the sandwich, his shoulders sagged. Relief washed over his face, raw and unguarded. Daniel swallowed hard. A memory rose uninvited. Himself at 9 years old, sitting on a church basement floor with his mother, sharing donated soup after his father disappeared. He remembered the shame. The hunger. And the one man who had smiled at him like it was nothing at all. "You got somewhere safe to go?" Daniel asked quietly. Eli nodded, though his eyes flicked away. "Yeah, sort of." Daniel knew that answer too. The rain began to ease, thinning to a mist. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed. Daniel stood, brushing off his jeans. "I've got to get to work," he said. "But, take care of yourself, okay?" Eli looked up at him, mouth full, eyes shining. "Thank you," he said. Not loudly, but with something heavy behind it. Daniel managed a small smile. He turned away, heart aching, stomach empty, unaware that this small, ordinary moment was about to ripple outward and come crashing back into his life in ways he couldn't imagine. As he boarded the bus, soaked and tired and running late, Daniel didn't know he'd just stepped into the first scene of a story that would test him, break him, and ultimately change everything. Chapter 2. By the time Daniel reached the warehouse, the rain had stopped, but the cold lingered in his bones. The building loomed like a concrete giant, windows streaked with grime, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. He clocked in 3 minutes late. Enough for a mark on his record. Enough to matter. Cutting it close again, Carter, his supervisor, Mark, called from the platform. Mark was the kind of man who wore authority like armor, always scanning for weakness. Try not to make it a habit. Daniel nodded, already moving toward his station. Won't happen again. It always did. As he lifted boxes and stacked pallets, his thoughts drifted back to the boy. Eli. The way his hands shook. The way he'd tried to be brave about being alone. Daniel pushed the image away. He needed focus. Mistakes here meant injuries. Or worse, termination. The hours crawled. His stomach gnawed at itself, the hollow ache a reminder of the lunch he'd given away. Around noon, the smell of microwaved food filled the break room. Daniel sipped water, pretending it helped. During his short break, his phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. Reminder, field trip fee due today. Daniel closed his eyes. He typed back quickly. I'll bring it tomorrow. He didn't know how, but he always said that. When his shift finally ended, darkness had already swallowed the sky. Daniel pulled on his jacket and stepped outside, the city glowing damp and restless. He headed toward the bus stop, shoulders slumped, exhaustion dragging at him. He almost walked past the small crowd gathered near the corner. Almost. A familiar voice cut through the noise. Sir, please. I'm not stealing. I swear. Daniel's heart lurched. He pushed closer, the knot in his chest tightening as he recognized Eli. The boy stood surrounded by onlookers, clutching a bruised apple. A convenience store clerk hovered nearby, arms crossed, face flushed with irritation. He tried to take food, the clerk snapped. I saw him. I was going to pay, Eli said, voice cracking. I just didn't have enough yet. Daniel stepped forward without thinking. Hey! All eyes turned to him. I saw this kid earlier, Daniel said, keeping his voice calm. He wasn't stealing. He's just hungry. The clerk scoffed. You know him. Daniel hesitated. No, but I gave him my lunch this morning. He's not lying. The crowd murmured. The clerk looked unconvinced but wary now. You paying for that apple? Daniel reached into his pocket. He counted the bills with a sinking feeling. It was barely enough. Still, he held out the money. I've got it. The clerk snatched it, muttering under his breath. Fine. Get him out of here. Daniel turned to Eli, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You okay? Eli nodded, eyes wet. I didn't want trouble. I know, Daniel said softly. They walked away together, the city noise swelling around them. At the bus stop, Eli sat on the bench, staring at the ground. Why do you help me? He asked suddenly. Daniel considered the question. Because someone once helped me, he said. And because you shouldn't have to go through this alone. Eli swallowed. My dad says that too. Daniel paused. Where is he? Eli hesitated. Working, I think. There was a weight in that answer. Daniel didn't push. The bus arrived. Daniel stood. I've got to go, he said. But listen. Tomorrow morning, I'm here around the same time. If you need breakfast, I'll bring extra. Eli looked up, surprised. Then he smiled. A real smile this time. Okay. As the bus pulled away, Daniel watched the boy shrink into the distance. He felt lighter somehow, despite everything. Like maybe, just maybe, doing the right thing still mattered. He didn't know that kindness, once given, had a way of coming back. Sometimes gently. Sometimes like a storm. Chapter 3. The next morning didn't start with rain. It started with shouting. Daniel was halfway down the block when he heard his name echo through the street. He turned just in time to see a security guard barreling toward him, Mark not far behind. "That's him!" Mark shouted. "That's the guy I told you about." Daniel froze. "What's going on?" The guard grabbed his arm. "You're coming with us." People stopped. Phones came out. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. "I haven't done anything," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Mark sneered. "Don't play dumb. We've been missing inventory. And now we find out you've been hanging around thieves." Daniel's mind raced. "What are you talking about?" "That kid," Mark said loudly. "The homeless one. He was caught stealing from a store. And you're always late. Always distracted. Looks suspicious to me." "This is insane," Daniel protested. "I helped him. That's all." The guard tightened his grip. "Save it." They marched him back toward the warehouse as whispers followed. Someone laughed. Someone shook their head. Daniel's face burned with humiliation. Inside, they sat him in a bare office. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. "We're terminating your employment," Mark said flatly. "Effective immediately." Daniel stared at him. "You can't do this." "We can," Mark replied. "And we are." Daniel's world tilted. "Lily. Rent. Everything. Please," he said quietly. "You're making a mistake." Mark leaned back. "You should have thought about that before associating with criminals." The door opened suddenly. A man stepped in. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in a dark coat still damp from the morning air. His presence filled the room, commanding attention without effort. "I believe," the man said calmly, "that the mistake is yours." Mark frowned. "Who are you?" The man met Daniel's eyes first. Recognition flashed there. Gratitude. Something deeper. "I'm Eli's father," he said. Daniel's breath caught. "And," the man continued, turning back to Mark, "I also happen to own this warehouse." Silence slammed into the room. Chapter 4. Mark's face drained of color. "Sir, I didn't know." "No," the man interrupted. "You didn't care." He stepped closer, his voice still calm but edged with steel. "My son told me about the man who gave him his lunch. About the one who stood up for him. About the one being accused right now." Mark stammered. "We were just following protocol." "Protocol doesn't include false accusations," the owner said. "Or public humiliation." He turned to Daniel. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely, "for what you've been put through." Daniel could barely speak. "I didn't know who he was," he managed. The man nodded. "That's the point." He faced Mark again. "You're suspended. Effective immediately. Pending investigation." Mark opened his mouth, then closed it. The owner placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Your job is secure. And I'd like to talk to you about a promotion." Daniel's eyes burned. Outside, the story spread quickly. The same people who'd whispered now watched in or as Daniel walked out with his dignity restored. Eli waited by the door. When he saw Daniel, he ran to him, throwing his arms around his waist. "Dad!" he shouted, beaming. The man smiled. "Thank you," he said again, "for seeing my son. When others didn't." Daniel knelt, hugging Eli back. "Anytime." Justice didn't roar. It settled. Quiet. Firm. Earned. Chapter 5. 3 years later, sunlight streamed through the windows of a small house with a white fence and a swing in the yard. Daniel stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while Lily set the table, humming to herself. "You're burning them," she teased. "Adds character," Daniel replied, smiling. Life wasn't perfect. But it was good. At work, Daniel managed a team now. He treated people differently than Mark ever had. With patience. With respect. With the understanding that everyone carried unseen battles. Sometimes, on weekends, Eli came over. The boys played. The fathers talked. Bonds formed not by blood, but by choice. One evening, Daniel stood on the porch, watching the kids laugh. He thought about that rainy morning. About a sandwich in a paper bag. About how close he'd come to walking away. Kindness didn't always come back right away. Sometimes it hurt first. Sometimes it cost you everything. But sometimes, it changed everything. Daniel looked at his daughter. His home. His life. And he knew. What you give when you have little matters the most. Because you never know who's watching. And you never know what kind of future you're feeding.